Hello, sixth graders. Our next unit of study in social studies will be about early explorers. And we're going back 1,000 years. Now, this land over here, the United States and Canada and Mexico and the Caribbean islands, all of these places, people didn't know that they existed. This is Europe up over here, and people didn't realize that all of this land was over here. So there were explorers that did find the land, and one of the biggest misconceptions and false piece of history that I was taught when I was your age was that Christopher Columbus discovered this new land, that North America was discovered by Christopher Columbus. But we all know this to be false. So we're going to learn today as to who were the first people to discover this land, the North and South America. This is kind of a zoomed out image. And you can see here that this is the Atlantic Ocean. This is obviously the United States. There's Florida. And up here is Canada. And we now are able to identify all the provinces and territories and all the physical regions. So now that we know all these places and the names of them, what they're called today, we're going to learn about who actually discovered this land. And it's these people over here in Europe. And on my next slide, I'm going to be zooming in a little bit so that way we can zoom into this main section here of Europe, the North Atlantic Ocean, and Canada. All right, sixth graders. So this is a more zoomed in image of Google Earth. And just for some reference, this down here is obviously Florida. And this is the east coast of the United States. This is Canada, or what is today Canada. Greenland, Iceland. And then over here, this is Norway, and then the United Kingdom and Ireland. So that's just a little idea of where we're at. Now, we're going back 1,000 years, sixth graders. 1,000. It is the year 980. And there are these people that are living here in Norway, and they were some very gruff people, and they loved to explore, and they loved land and power, and they wanted to be the ones who discover new land. And these people were known as Vikings. These aren't obviously the football team, the Vikings. These are the true original Vikings. And like I said, we're going back to the year 1980. One of the most famous Vikings ever was this guy right here. His name was Eric the Red, and many historians believe that the reason that he got the name Eric the Red was because he had red hair. So Eric the Red was a Viking and also an explorer, and he led a group of Vikings to find new land. So they hopped in their boats and they started sailing, and they ended up here at this land. And it was really nice land, because what we know about looking at maps and things, all that greenery there represents good land. You know, there's clearly some forests or some kind of farmland. So it's decent land. And Eric the Red was like, man, this is great. However, we don't want all these people that are still living in Europe to all come here and live. So he decided to play a trick. And he said, you know what? Let's name this place Iceland. So this landmass here is known as Iceland. So if you're a European back over here and you hear about this new land that's discovered and you could go live there, but once you hear the name and that it's called Iceland, you would most likely be, I don't think I'm going to go live in a place called Iceland. So by doing this, Eric the Red was able to keep this a very exclusive group of Vikings that came to this land. But he knew that other people would be continuing to explore. So that's what he did. So he got back on his boat. Oopsies, what's going on here? He got back on his boat, did some more sailing, and ended up here. Now, you can just tell by this image that the land of here looks a lot different than here. This land today, sixth graders, is known as Greenland. Greenland. So this is where the big trick comes in from the Vikings. The Vikings, because they named this land Greenland and this place Iceland, all the Europeans were like, oh, well, we don't want to go to Iceland, where it's actually really nice to live there, and it is a beautiful area, and there's a lot of vegetation and things. They all end up going to Greenland. Well, Greenland was a very, very hard place to live because it is clearly full of ice. It is snow. It's part of the Arctic, and a lot of that weather and climate has now gone into this land. So this was the big trick of the Vikings. They did not want everyone to come to their nice land here that they wanted to keep for themselves, so they tricked everyone by switching the names. So anyway, we have Eric the Red here, and it was the year 1880 that he left Norway area, got to Iceland, and he ended up 2 years later here in Greenland. And unfortunately, in Greenland, this is where Eric the Red passed away. So R.I.P. Sorry, Eric the Red. You had passed away. Well, before Eric the Red passed away, he did meet a nice Viking lady, and they ended up having a son. As I said, Eric the Red had a son before he passed away in Greenland, and this is his son right here. His son's name was Leif Erikson. And down here at the bottom, sixth graders, I added their pictures again with their name. So we have Eric the Red. Eric the Red, red beard. He had a son, and they named him Leif. Well, this is 1,000 years ago, sixth graders, and there obviously were not near as many people in the world as there are today, and this is how we started getting last names. And in this case, you will notice that Eric the Red had a son. They named him Leif Erikson because he was the son of Eric the Red. This is how last names started. So you're probably thinking, wow, there are a lot of different last names that have like son at the end, like Johnson, Erickson. So clearly if someone has a last name of Johnson, there was someone in their lineage, their family history, where there was a John and he had a son and his last name was then Johnson. So that's just a little fun fact there. But now it is year 1000. So it's about 20 or so years after Eric the Red left Norway and discovered this new land, Iceland and Greenland, and he passed away and had a son, Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson decided to take after his father's exploring and continued to explore the ocean. So he got a crew and they hopped in their boats and they started sailing down, and they ended up here in this land, sixth graders. They ended up here. And some of you are probably thinking, oh my goodness, that is what is today Newfoundland. And you are absolutely correct. Eric the Red was the first, Leif Erikson was the first European to get to the Americas, North and South America. He was the first one, and this happened around year 1000. Well, back then, they ended up calling this land Vinland because there are a lot of vines there, I guess. And what is today, like I said, Newfoundland. Now, Europeans didn't stay there, though. That's the one thing. This is where we get the misconception of Christopher Columbus, because Europeans did not stay in Newfoundland, or what they were calling Vinland, because there were actually a lot of natives there. There were native people living there, and they started battles with the Vikings, and it ended up resulting in Leif Erikson and the other Vikings saying, well, enough with this, and they ended up leaving Vinland and going back to Greenland and Iceland. So even though they didn't stay there because they ended up having conflict with the natives, they were technically the first ones to find this new land. So, sixth graders, this just reinforces that this man right here, Christopher Columbus, did not discover the new land. It was, in fact, the Vikings, Eric the Red and Leif Erikson.